What's up, guys? We're back. Sorry, my keys are making noise. We're back for Invincible episode 2 and 3 coverage. We're just putting these together since it's easier. And we can kind of, talk about things that happened in the second and the third episode interchangeably. So, we got a lot of stuff. We got, a little bit more sneak peek at the investigation going on behind the deaths of the Guardians, which we saw in the first episode. We also have the recruitment of the new Guardians, as well as the first 2 invasions, or I should say attempted invasions of the Flaxians. So, yeah. And there's a lot of stuff in between there, but Michael, where do you want to start? What's your thoughts on this?
So, we did have many, so we're reviewing the 2 episodes. Mm-hmm. So, we have many fight scenes throughout. Yep. We have introduction of some new characters. We got a demon investigator that may remind you of one character in other series.
Yeah, it may or may not be.
May or may not. But yeah, overall we have a lot of relational stuff too. You have the forming of the new teams. Mm-hmm. You have new characters and a look on Robot and Cecil and kind of the U.S. government, how they operate as well. So yeah, there's a lot of good scenes here. I don't want to talk too much about the changes yet from the comic, but we do have a lot of action, and we get to learn more about the family we're following and Robot and all the other characters.
Yeah, I think just looking at Mark first, maybe you do see that I do love William in these last couple episodes, with him helping Mark out with his, arrangement with Amber, which I was really I was trying to remember, because like I said, it's been a while since I've read the series, and so I was trying to remember if she was the same character. She is confirmed the same character that he's with in one of the other later arcs. But yeah, I do like seeing Mark having to kind of, maybe the first glimpse of him having to balance his home life with his superhero life, and how that, he's starting to see how one will impact the other. And, you get to see kind of his father's take on that as well, with, him trying to give his son some advice, but Nolan's having his own thing with, obviously Damien Darkblood, which is the demon detective or whatever, yes. Kind of questioning him a little bit more, which I was really, now I could be wrong, because I know this is a comic character, but I don't remember his influence or his part being as big as it's making out to be in the show. So that is one of the the minor things that they're doing with that. But that mostly goes over with some of the changes, considering what happened with the Guardians, which we can talk about here in a little bit. But it's going to be a long section, so I'll wait that off there. But we also get some setup to, like Michael said, some new characters. We have the new Guardians coming in. So a lot of them we were already introduced with in the second episode, which was a lot of former members of the Teen Team, which is Robot, Adam Eve, Duplicate, and Rex Boyd, which they're all really cool characters. A lot of them have big roles, maybe extending to the the end of the series, or some maybe not so much. But you get a little bit, not only introduction, but just them getting into the Guardians and kind of the relationships that each of them have, and what might relate to other characters as well, considerably, like Invincible. But then you also do have a new addition like Monster Girl, which is one that I already like the little setup they've had with her and Robot, which because that plays a part bigger later on. So sowing the seeds there, I did like that, and also you get kind of the first glimpse of Robot maybe being more than what he says, or maybe having different motivations than you might think. There's a little bit of mystery behind there, but then you also get Black Samson, which I do really like. Black Samson, I was slightly disappointed how they remixed that element of him, because I think when he's first introduced, it's a bit harder read than we see here. But I don't know, they could still spin something like that. But Michael, is there anything you want to talk about before we get into the comparison, I guess, sort of?
Yeah, the only thing I want to say is before we get into this, there's definitely our opinion's going to change, because a lot of these arcs that we're talking about, we don't really know how they're going to end. So, it's we can't be too harsh or, too optimistic about where the series, where these mini changes are going to end up because we haven't seen, what the writers are doing.
Right. And some of these, like, they'll affect arcs, like, not even close to where we're at now, or, like, some of the arcs, like, we may see the end by, like, the end of the season. I guess we really don't know, because with them being 45-minute episodes, it's kind of hard to gauge, like, how much material they're going to run into. But I will say, before I make any, like, opinions of what I think in terms of translating from the comic or whatever, I think it's still a very enjoyable show. So if you want to stop here or just go see it for yourself, or just looking for, like, is it worth the watch at least? Like, yeah, it's been a really fun show so far. And I think in terms of just like the way the action's done, the way that they're setting up the characters, I think it's, worth the watch. And I think it's been a pretty good adaptation so far.
If you liked episode 1, you'll like episode 2 and 3. So go ahead and watch them. I wouldn't necessarily binge them because you do have a week or longer before more content comes out, but you can watch them at your leisure for sure.
Yeah, I don't know with like streaming services, like how they gauge rating, like quote unquote ratings, to know like, the success of the show if they wait till after the whole episodes are released and they look at the viewership then. But so I may be hurting the show necessarily by giving this advice, but I would say almost like if you want to check out the first episode, check out the first episode and then maybe like watch the other ones like either immediately, like a week or every other week, or just wait and watch all of them on the April 4th is when the 4th episode releases. But I guess to get kind of into comparison stuff. Okay, so if you're a comic fan, you probably know, but there is some slight change-ups with regards to like how Nolan kind of handled the Guardians. I mean, it pretty much goes out, he does kill all of the Guardians. It's a little bit faster paced because like Nolan's supposed to be super OP in the comic, or at least, in comparison to like anything Earth has. So with that change, obviously Nolan is a little bit more beat up, which makes it to where he's not able to get a clean getaway, which in turn leads to some people being suspicious of him and like terms of, why he was left alive, why doesn't he know or have an idea of who attacked him. And I think it does add, to some extent, I do like it because it does add an extra layer of tension of like, oh, I'm going to have to really tread lightly here in a sense. But I do think it is probably for like the grand scheme of things, like I kind of maybe alluded to in the first episode, that it's not a great look back when we get introduced to new characters that are absolutely going to be stronger and are going to pose a really big threat, and looking back and being like, okay, so they're going toe to toe with them, but they like struggled in this earlier part. It's a little weird. I don't know. I think some people like don't get as obsessed about power levels as maybe I do.
I don't care that much, but that's because anime, all of them were messed up.
Yeah, but I will say the one thing that, and again, like that's not like a big criticism, and I'm like totally fine with the way they remixed it. I think more so the thing that is a little bit more subtle, but depending on how they go forward, it might change, is you're getting insights to kind of like why Nolan might be doing this, and you can kind of see those kind of shown through his interactions with Mark and kind of the advice he's trying to give him, or just, kind of the way he's trying to steer him. And the only reason why I thought this might be like, a bad director or maybe a representation of the character in the comic is because, it's been a while, so I understand. But like Michael was like, well, I think maybe it's just, that like he has a really flawed view of things, which technically is true. But I think in the show, it's kind of seeming as like he might just be misguided in like the evil sense, like he's evil. But I think it's more so like, he really does have a sense of like knowing that these are like wrong, like what he's doing, and like, kind of the stuff he's trying to tell Mark is wrong, but it's just that he does have loyalty and
elsewhere,
and he has a sense of duty. I won't go more than that because I don't want to spoil anything, but I think, that representation is maybe a little bit off the mark, but again, like we can see what that will be like by the end of the season.
So just one line that sticks out to me, where he's telling Mark to basically keep his hero life separate from his home life, and if you know what happens later on, it's like sometimes that's not going to work out,
Well, and I do love
they are going to intersect.
I will say, out of all the lines, like I don't know if that one in particular I did like, because if you look at the comic and like where we're going to be going eventually, that is like pretty much what Nolan has to force himself to do himself. So it's kind of interesting that, that almost seems like the only way in his mind. And he tries to see if Mark can understand his point of view, which, I don't know. Like, that was like, I'm curious to see them reference that line later on.
Yeah, so we haven't talked about the bro yet. My boy in space. How did you like that scene? How did you feel about it?
I thought that was actually because Alan is one of my favorite characters, and I really liked seeing him. I was a little hesitant because I'm not a big fan of Seth Rogen, who does the voice of Alan, but I thought he did a good job of that. I thought they brought that character to life pretty accurately.
Yeah, I saw him more as Alan than Seth Rogen, which is kind of. Which is cool. Like, that's what I wanted to do. See him as a character where, like, the voice actor doesn't take you out of who the character is.
Yeah.
I mean, even with Nolan, it's sometimes it's like, oh, that's my dude. I know, who the voice actor, especially when he makes an epic speech in this episode. But so far now, we didn't get a long scene with him or like a full episode with Alan, and we have a lot more content to come. But at least so far, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's something that one of the things that I do like about this series a lot is that a lot of the things that end up coming back or end up getting a payoff way later in the series, a lot of them are kind of set up or teased at least in this beginning part of the story. And I'm always a sucker for something like that when it you get the payoff maybe like 40 or 50 issues later or a season later. So I did really like that. Of course, knowing that Alan's got a good foundation in the show really warms my heart because, again, like I said, he's one of my favorite characters. They did have, like we said, just before I forget it, but they did change a little bit of another dynamic of the assassination of the Guardians of Gom with not having the attack during the funeral service with Black Samson's butler, which is a big moment because it kind of gives a reason to the reader why the government is not suspecting Nolan of it, because obviously with Nolan being the strongest person on the planet, he is the most capable to doing a task like that. But I do like in the comic that they did give this other element of Black Samson, he was a part of the Globe and then he lost his powers and they kicked him out and they were pretty unforgiving about that or unapologetic about it. And then, having not only his butler lash out at the funeral, but also just having Black Samson in the past giving threats to the Globe. So that was an element they haven't played in. So maybe, I guess there's a chance for that to still pop up in a remixed way. But that was one that was a little bit sad because I thought we lost a little bit of depth in that storyline or that conflict of where we're at right now.
Yeah, that's fair. And I guess we should talk about the reoccurring aliens. We see 3 invasions over the course of the first 3 episodes. I think they were done pretty well. I think probably my favorite action scene, and it probably the first one and the end of the first episode is really great too. That's more brutal, but it was really cool to watch a One Punch Man style scene where Nolan goes to another world and just absolutely destroys everything. And that was kind of cool. And it did not necessarily make up for the difference, the difference in power level, but it did at least show that he's really OP in comparison to where Invincible is right now. Yeah,
and also that Earth is kind of his primary goal or mission or focus or point or whatever you want to call it.
It's his home base.
Yeah, so seeing the level of I think more so I just love seeing the duality of it. So you see, I mean, obviously he's taking them out when he's pushing them back on the Earth side, but he's not really decimating them, and he's not ruthless about how he's taking them out. He's still punching them or blowing them back into the portals. But I love that once he's out of the public eye and he knows Earth's safe, he's just taking out the threat in the most cold and calculating way. It's such a great moment. And I like that. I still think my favorite fight is in the last part of the episode 1, but this one's still pretty good. I will say, just because it's really important about the core characters, I would say, you want to talk about Eve and kind of her relationship developing with Mark, because I do like how it's not the stereotypical you got obviously the main heroine and then you got the main guy and then they're going to get together, I do like how there's more so like it kind of starts off as friendships. I mean, obviously there is like a crush or like a semi attraction there, but it doesn't just lead off of that immediately. There is obviously reasons for that. Eve being connected to Rexplode, and then also Mark having his chance with Amber. But I do like how they didn't quite keep it accurate to the comic, but I think they remixed it in a way that I was completely happy with, and it led to kind of some maybe even cooler scenes, because when we get like the seismic guy, that's like I think one of the first people that Mark fights alone. It's like in the first 3 or 5, I think. And like in this remix, we actually get him fighting with Eve, which I think kind of solidifies maybe their friendship, or like why they have opportunities to find a bit more attraction, maybe more so than the comic, which I actually liked a little bit better, because in the comic it's like, and maybe this is another fault of the or like a way to counterbalance it in the show, but like in the comic there's like months going by, so like there's a little bit more like believability, like behind the scenes or like off panel, that Eve and Mark are hanging out for a longer period of time, so that's why there's a bit of that friendship forming there, and why Eve feels comfortable opening up with Mark about her relationship with Rex, or like the problems therein. But in the show, since it's kind of like fast forward a little bit in time, or like we don't really get as many time skips confirmed, I think, as is in the comic, having scenes like that where we do see them actually fighting together, or like in situations where they're by themselves, a bit more believable with their character connection.
Yeah, I think that has the least amount of relevant changes from the comics, because it kind of shows all the key moments for the most part. There's one that's cut, but it leads to the same direction.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see that. I'm sure they'll have some more connections there. And then I guess the final thing we can talk about is there is, and you mentioned it briefly, but the Blue Boys come back.
The Mauler twins,
Blue brother boys. They be back, and hey, they were nice to the one guy who fed him pot pies. So that was kind of a funny scene.
You never bite the hand that feeds you. So
yep, and
you just slap it on a fingerprint monitor.
That's right. Yeah, so we get to see how, I think in some ways it shows that the government is still at this point not equipped. They have a lot of technology that's advanced, but they're still not equipped to deal with the threats that the heroes are dealing with. So
yeah,
there is dependency there,
and there is like the I would thought, honestly, because I kind of forgot. Maybe it's that I didn't forget, or maybe I was just more so confused and I was trying to figure out who it was. But we do have somebody helping the twins escape from prison, which is one that I was really surprised that they set up this early. But I'm curious to see what people might think of that character now, in terms of maybe like some like comic only readers did at this point of the story. But I do, I still want to see the joke, but I do love, maybe I'll just mention it here because I don't know if they'll mention it in the show, but I do love how like in the comic it's like, every time they use the teleporter for the government, it's like, oh yeah, this costs taxpayers like $4 billion every time we use it. And I do love how we get to see them just kind of like use it for the most like mundane things. It's like just trying to get a hold of Mark, or, this, that, and the third. But yeah, a lot of promise for these first 3 episodes. And I can't wait to see what they bring in the 4th episode and, the rest of the season. There's going to be 8, and I don't know. Because we're like, I think by like the end of episode 3, it's issue 8 or 10 or something like that. So who knows? We might be able to get through the first like couple of volumes, maybe 3 volumes if they really want to push it by the end of this. So some things can happen.
Yeah, I do hope they slow down. Not necessarily pace, but they slow down for more important moments and character building. I think they're doing okay so far, but with a comic like this, you have so many characters that eventually you got to slow down.
Yeah, and there's so many arcs that, there does need to be some breathing room in between there, which, because like even with the 48 minute runtime, it's still like a lot. We're breezing through a lot of stuff, and I think because of that runtime, it helps keep the pacing right and it doesn't make it seem too fast. But yeah, they should definitely, when things start to heat up or when they does need the smaller moments, they're going to need to prioritize that, because sometimes just the amount of time that they're allotted isn't going to help you every time. There's going to be some more hands-on management there. But
sure.
With that being said, guys, I think we are done for this one. We'll be back for episode 4. Like I said, that's April 4th, I believe. So tune in back. I hate when I do that. Stay tuned and come back for that episode review. But until then, guys, we'll see you later.
We'll see you with more Invincible.